Hello, and welcome to the Natural State Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Anthony Gustin. It is my belief that the natural state of any living organism is health, and that our artificial habitat has forced us into having artificial health problems. This show is my attempt to dive deep and learn about using nutrition, sleep, movement, relationships, and more to help you reclaim your natural state of health in a modern world and show you how to thrive in an environment that's stacked against you. If you enjoyed today's show, you can find out more details and information at dranthonygustin.com. On this episode, Chris Irvin comes back to the show to join me as a co-host to go through a Q&A. So we haven't done one of these in a long time. People have been sending us questions, and we've been grouping them by sort of topics so that the way they have a little bit of a theme. And this one is about supplements. So people asking the effectiveness, dosing, timing, etc. of melatonin, creatine, CBD, vitamin D, what people should be taking for coronavirus, quality of supplements, what you should be looking for, etc. So we dive into this one. Really appreciate you guys' questions. This is super fun for us to do this stuff, so we're going to start bringing them back a little bit more often. So if you have any more questions, just email them to me or send me a DM on Instagram, dranthonygustin, and I will add them to the list, and we will get to them when we can. So thank you for all your thoughtful questions, and I hope you guys enjoy the show. This episode is brought to you by Neurohacker Collective. I've been using their products on and off the last few years and have always been a huge fan of how they formulate their products, their dosing, and they just don't mess around. So Dr. Greg Kelly, their lead product formulator, is actually on the podcast previously if you want to check that episode out. But you can trust that Neurohacker Collective is always doing 100% dosing backed up by research. A lot of other companies, what they do is they sprinkle in amounts of ingredients so that way you're not actually getting the full amount that is required to have a physiological effect. You just get a little sprinkling and dosing in there. Their products are so effective that Dr. Kelly actually recommends taking 2 days off a week, and their serving size is 7 really huge capsules, which just shows how much active ingredient they actually put in their product. I am personally a huge fan of their caffeine-free version of their product, Quality of Mind, and I take it on an empty stomach with exogenous ketones in the morning when I know that I really want to get a bunch of uninterrupted deep work hours done. I feel in the zone for literally hours, and the best part is there's no crazy crash afterwards. If you're not a nootropic person, they also have an amazing product called Eternus that contains all the precursors to NAD, which is far more effective than taking direct NAD supplements to reduce oxidative damage to your cells. Again, love the formulation and how they went about making this product. If you want to try out any Neurohacker Collective products, just head to neurohacker.com and use the code AG15 for 15% off all of their products. That's neurohacker.com and code AG15 for 15% off all of their products. This episode is brought to you by Paleo Valley. I've been a huge fan of this company for years, ever since I met the founders at a conference, I'd say 4 years ago plus, and have been eating their 100% grass-fed, grass-finished beef sticks ever since then. The biggest reason, though, recently why I asked them to come on the show as a sponsor is that they do a lot of support in regenerative farming. They actually continue to reinvest into helping small farmers scale and are really building out an amazing sort of supply chain to help regenerative agriculture scale. Not only that, their beef sticks aren't dry as a bone and leave that weird Slim Jim style waxy coating in your mouth. They are plump and juicy and not in a weird way. We gobble these guys up at the Perfect Keto offices when we don't have time to get a full meal in, and they're the perfect real food snack. If you're looking for one of the best beef sticks around that are not only great tasting, but responsibly sourced, check out Paleo Valley. And the great news is listeners of this podcast get 15% off. So just go to paleovalley.com/AG15 or use code AG15 at checkout at paleovalley.com for 15% off. That's PALEOVALLEY.com/AG15. Chris, welcome.
Welcome
to another episode of Ask the Guys here.
Do we have a title for this?
So here we are. This is what did we do? 5 or 6 other episodes like this before?
It's been a while.
Yeah.
It's been a while since we've done one.
And people have been asking, so here we are again. Chris is, if you guys don't know him, Chris Irvin.
There you go.
No G on that.
Nailed it.
The Ketologist.
That's
trying to get him to break out a little bit more and change his name to just his name.
Yeah, we got to talk about that.
So talk about what?
We're going to have to talk. We'll talk about it offline.
Off mic?
Yeah, we'll talk about it offline.
But yeah, we're going to talk about stuff. Hopefully not everything has to do with ketosis, even though Chris is our resident keto expert here. But yeah, here we are. So Q&A time. This one is about supplements. We got a lot of questions about different types of supplements, how to use them, when to use them. So let's fire them off. Let's see what we have.
All right. So first question we have is from Heather M. And the question is, should I supplement with melatonin if I'm having trouble sleeping?
So I would say no. And we can dig into this. This is in my newsletter a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if you read that, but tore it down a little bit. Melatonin has its place. It is a precursor to a lot of different things in your body. It's naturally secreted by your brain. Anything that's naturally secreted by your brain, I'm not a huge fan of taking exogenously. This is actually, if you look at it, it's the only hormone that you can get without a prescription, technically. It's technically a hormone in your body. It's the only one you can get without a prescription.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think my thoughts with melatonin, I think the answer is that it depends, because I think it depends on if you are living a lifestyle that allows you to produce it naturally. So I think like if you're a night shift worker or you're somebody who isn't able to, you know, if you're not, it's not the first step you should take if you're having trouble sleeping, right? So like if you're not checking the other boxes, with you're trying to improve your sleep quality, then you shouldn't be turning to melatonin. But if you are your work circumstances or living circumstances have you in a position where you aren't going to be able to produce a lot of melatonin naturally, then I think getting good sleep is going to be important. And if melatonin can help, then I think it can be a good supplement.
Yeah. So the question is, what does melatonin do and how is it produced and when is it produced by the body naturally? Melatonin essentially just tells your body, it activates a cascade of different neurochemicals to secrete that basically tell your body it's time to go to sleep. Secreted by the pineal gland, I believe. And it is associated with a lot of different things, but light is a major one. So what happens is most people don't fall asleep with the sunset, right? So the sun normally would go down in all of human history, and for every other animal, this is what happens. Your body starts upregulating melatonin. The melatonin is sort of this master switch, so it tells the rest of your body to start going down and shutting down for rest. When this doesn't happen, it can be very hard to go to sleep, but not only that can stop you from getting into different stages of sleep as fast as you normally would. So you may be unconscious, but that doesn't mean you're getting the restorative sleep that you normally would. So why is this a problem? Well, people are, after the sun goes down, they're exposed to blue light. They're on their screens, fluorescent lights in their house, and this suppresses melatonin production. So if that's the case and you have no other option, maybe it's a good idea to take it. I would take it regularly, but at the same exact time. Doesn't mean that like you shouldn't be producing it all over the place. So it shouldn't be all over the map. Like if you're taking melatonin and you're taking it one at 8 p.m., one at 10 p.m., one at 7 p.m., and all over the place, you're basically telling your brain that you're traveling in time zones back and forth and back and forth. So I would focus far more on this as a last resort and for special circumstances, which we can get into. But the number one thing that I do when I go somewhere is if I have blue light blocking glasses, I use blue blocks. And there's a bunch out there. That's the ones I prefer. If I can't have control of the lights at my house, I have lights that dim when the sun sets and then turn red and orange after the sun has set. So those are wavelengths that do not suppress melatonin. And this is why the lenses on the blue light blocking glasses are the same. They filter all that blue light. Think about it like if you're outside at a campfire, the light is like a very orangish, yellowish, reddish hue. There's very little to no blue light in there. So that's all from the sun. So removing that from your day-to-day life and as consistently as possible, so that way you're not getting these weird signals to your body that you're switching time zones, which is, again, is another completely unnatural thing for humans to go through. That would be a huge thing. But I think there's a lot of other things why people aren't getting good sleep. And so assuming that it's because of your lack of melatonin production is, I think, a little silly. I think that you could look at, so obviously light is a huge one. Temperature of your room is another one. The ability for light to get in your house from outside is another one. So what I'm trying to say here. Shades.
Blue light blockers?
No.
What are you talking about?
There's light blocking shades. What am I trying to say here?
Blackout curtains.
Blackout curtains. Yeah. So those are a good thing. And then we have lights,
especially if you're in a city too, where there's a lot of additional light. Yeah.
So we have then lights that turn on when sunrise should be happening. So there's sort of another thing that happens here is people get blackout curtains and then they don't wake up to the sun, which is, again, another a problem in the wrong direction. So we actually have lights that turn on as the sun rises locally. So you can just do all this stuff is like super easy. If you get Philips Hue lights, what we have, they're great. And eating super close to bedtime is another one. I think people eat way too close to bed. So I would put at least 3 hours before you're trying to shut down. I think mental stimulation is also too much. So people are worried about this or that. They're looking at the news, they're watching TV, they're just in their head. I think even hanging out with friends, like I've done in the last couple of nights, hanging out with people until like 9:30 is when you usually go to bed. Then I get home and I'm like super stimulated and I can't settle down for like another couple hours. Yeah. There's a lot of different reasons why people wouldn't be able to sleep or feeling restless. And I think lack of melatonin production is probably the last thing you should worry about. Yeah. What are your thoughts here?
Well, I agree with that. I think the two things I would add to that, I agree that I think it's a last ditch thing that you need to try. I think there's a lot of other things you can get in check with your environment and with your health habits before you need to turn to that supplementation. The two things I would add for helping is sleeping with your phone either out of the room or at least face down, or not sleeping with a television on. There's some really interesting research out there that even when your eyelids are closed and you're sleeping, flashing lights can cause phase shifts in your circadian rhythms that can suppress melatonin production or ramp up cortisol in the middle of the night, things like that. So, that can be as simple as having your phone facing up and it lighting up while you're sleeping. That can completely throw off your sleep. So I thought that was a really interesting thing when I was reading that study. So I think that would be a big thing to consider. And then there is some interesting research on melatonin for neurodegenerative diseases where, it seems like as we age, our natural production of melatonin starts to decrease. And they've done some studies where supplementing with it in elderly populations really increases cognitive function. That paper actually just came out this year, I think, showing that. So like you said, I think it's either a last ditch effort supplement or it's something used for very specific circumstances.
Yeah. And I guess the question would be too, like why or in neurodegeneration are we seeing the lack of melatonin production?
Right.
Yeah.
It's probably environmentally related to some point.
Either an accumulation over a long period of time, or these people are in an environment that they're not getting proper secretion, or both.
Right.
I use melatonin when I travel. If I'm traveling over 3 time zones, basically if I leave the United States and go international, I use it and then take it, but 2 hours before I want to be asleep consistently until I get back on an appropriate sleep schedule. Yeah. So that's the time where I would use it, because then I'm basically telling my body, like, hey, it's time to start this shutdown sequence. Shift work is another thing where it's brutal. Yeah. And I can't even imagine what the life's like, but that could also be another time where it could be helpful.
Yeah, I think that's one of the times where you just have no choice but to use it if that's what your work schedule is like.
Yeah, and optimize tons of other things like we were talking about, but it's still, to switch your body like that so much is rough. It's rough. Yeah. All right. So hopefully that answers the question. So just to recap, I would say the last ditch thing, I use it in very sparing amounts when I travel, like 3 to 5 milligrams. Some people I know are all over the place. Even if you're taking it now, I would not advise it for it. But if you are, take it. There's no need to take over 5 milligrams. And if you do, just do it at the same exact time to get your body in sync. Yeah. But look at all of those other things to help you get a better night's sleep instead.
Yeah. Agreed. All right. Next question we have is from FNX Fueled, and it's, what are your thoughts on creatine?
Creatine, I think, is like one of the most studied supplements, I think.
I think it is. I think there's the most published peer-reviewed research on creatine.
Yeah. I actually did so I got my doctorate and master's at the same time, and my master's thesis was on creatine metabolism in research as far as effectiveness goes. And it's completely safe. And so if you want to take it, sure, feel free. There is the things that I found at that point. So what does creatine do? It buffers the creatine phosphate pathway. So your energy producing little organelles, your mitochondria, everything produces ATP. ATP is adenosine triphosphate. There's 3 phosphate groups. One of them gets cleaved to use as energy. And then you have adenosine diphosphate, ADP. The creatine phosphate is there to help reload the ADP back into ATP. It's basically what it's there for. So it allows you to get more work done, and it allows you that cycle of ADP to ATP to transition back faster and faster and faster. And the safety is great. There's no problems with it. I would say the need would be if you're eating a lot of protein from animal sources, I don't think you need to supplement with it. But it's extremely cheap. It's like one of the highest commodity supplements you can find, and it's extremely safe. So if you want to take it, no problem. I mean, all the pre-workout stuff that I've ever formulated has had it in there. You do not need to do any sort of loading phase. That's what a lot of people think. You need to take 25 grams a day for 5 days, up to 2 weeks, and then you can go down to a maintenance list of like 5 grams a day. That has actually been debunked a bunch of times in research. And yeah, it's like you're not going to get super jacked from it, but if it helps training a little bit and it's great, feel free to do it. But again, if you're eating tons of meat, just not really that necessary.
Yeah.
But also no real downside to taking either.
What were you studying it for? Were you studying it for performance? Was it body composition? What was your...
Just like basically what the entire body of research said.
Okay.
Yeah. And like the mechanism of action.
So what do you think would be the best situation for somebody to use it? Would it be somebody who's trying to improve like, you hear people say who are trying to gain like muscle and strength, they use it. Is it just that it's improving your workout so that you're able to improve, body composition or strength levels, or can it actually directly contribute to?
Yeah. I mean, well, anything where you would want more energy, right? So if there's a rate limiting thing where you're trying to build muscle mass, you want to, break down muscle fibers, but you don't have the energy to do so. If you have more energy to do that, you get more muscle damage, you have more muscle recovery, then great. Also with, probably not as much with endurance stuff, but more explosive things, the performance is supported a little bit there. So, I mean, I think we were having this conversation a little bit with sort of like energy pathways when we were playing basketball. It was like, stop playing basketball, get this nerded out conversation about energy pathways. And
there's a lot of people that do that.
Yeah, there's like a lot of different things that happen here. And so I'd say like anything that uses ATP that you would want more energy for, great.
Yeah.
But also it's one of these things where these things are called supplements for a reason. They're not huge game changers, not going to move the needle considerably. And then you need to have everything else dialed in your life. Recovery, sleep, like we just talked about, food, I think even programming and training far more than you need to like worry about dosage of supplements. Like this is like, you get 90-95% the way there. Like this stuff can help with like the last 5-10% for sure in my mind.
So I haven't read research on creatine in a while, probably since grad school, I would say. Last time I checked, any of the new forms of creatine that were coming out were not showing to be more effective than the traditional monohydrate. Have you seen anything different?
I've never seen any sort of these. I mean, this is what happens in supplement world. And I don't know how much, so you've been helping out with the compliance stuff on the Perfect Keto side for the last couple of months. It's a dirty world in the supplement industry. And what happens is people, there's a commodity ingredient, anybody can put it in their products. So people then try to make new versions that are patented that maybe have this little tweak here or there. And then as you know, in research, you can get whatever data you want if you pay the right people, and they spin things however you want them to be spun. So that happens. And then you get these patented ingredients, and then those are sold as more efficacious or whatever. And like, I don't know, I'm not big on that.
I remember the last, like I said, it's probably been 4 or 5 years. So anything that's been published since then might tell a different story. But from the research I remember going through back in like 2015, 16, it was, creatine monohydrate was showing the same efficacy or maybe even better efficacy than any of the other forms. And it's a hell of a lot cheaper compared to, some of at the time they were starting to come out with some of those other forms of creatine and pretty expensive creatine monohydrate's like very cheap.
It's extremely cheap.
Yeah. You can buy like 100 servings of it for like, less than $10 probably.
Yeah. I mean, that was 2012 when I did my little thesis on it. And so that was, since then I haven't really kept up much around new forms. Like even then though, the amount of research was just insane about it.
Yeah. I almost it seems like when you look at the mechanism for it, it seems like something where, like I used to take it when I was playing ball in college. So it was like, maybe where you're training at this high, it's like you're practicing a couple times a day. You got like workouts in the morning. Maybe you're having a hard time, like also as a college kid, you're probably having a hard time getting like access to quality food and stuff. I think there can be situations like that where it can be useful where like either your training demand is just incredibly high or you don't have access to good food for whatever reason. Yeah. I think just like anything with supplements, right? It's either to help you reach a goal or to fill in some dietary gap. And I think like to your point, if you're eating plenty of animal meat, then there's not going to be a need to supplement.
Right. And
for most people.
And what I like about supplements like this too, is that melatonin we were just talking about, basically your body will stop producing melatonin and it will change the way your body produces something that it should. With creatine, it's it's something that your body can use to make something else. Basically a substrate your body can use. So same thing with like, people talk about nootropics, things like that. I like substrate mediated nootropics, meaning things that just give your body materials to do what it's supposed to do. Right. So giving your body, for instance, more choline. So that way your nerves can fire more essentially. Instead of, a neurotransmitter that goes in those lock and key mechanisms. It's a very different thing. Right. So I'm more of a fan of the substrates that can be used more than the actual end products that get replaced.
Right. Yeah. I like that. All right. Next question we got is from Bradley Dobbs, and it's, what are the benefits of CBD oil? When do you take it and how much?
Yeah, we were just talking about this like 20 minutes ago.
Yeah.
And CBD has been super hot over the last couple of years. And then it sort of collapsed as a fad ingredient way faster than I was anticipated, but I thought it was going to happen. It's because so many people were claiming so many wild things from it. Yeah. And it's one of these things where I was very skeptical for a long time. And I think it was because two reasons. One, I wasn't taking enough. And two, I wasn't taking a good form of it. And what I mean by form is like, I think that the source and quality here matters the most. And
there's a lot of crap out there.
Yeah, it's just junk. And then so when the market explodes, the same thing we're talking about with creatine, when like something gets so big and so cheap, people try to just put it in, to sprinkle it in a little amount, 1 gram here, 2 milligrams here, 4 milligrams there, to say like, oh, this, kombucha has CBD now, and charge 10 times more for it. It wasn't until I got started playing around with tinctures and taking 50, 60, 75 milligrams of it, that I started noticing some effects as far as reduction in anxiety and ability to sleep way easier, and also tested with my Oura Ring and my HRV, and my sleep would both improve.
Interesting.
When I would take it, and then when I wouldn't take it, it would go back to sort of like where my baseline would be.
Any differences in like deep sleep or REM sleep from it?
Yeah, I mean, who knows in that stuff, but it did seem like it was waking up less.
Yeah.
Less as far as the cycles go, but just that I was staying asleep longer. Yeah. Which is really the only thing that I trust in the Oura Ring from sleep cycles is when it's like shows the white bars of you getting up. Right. It seems to be pretty accurate.
Yeah. Do you think like around sleep is probably the best time to take a CBD supplement? Or
I mean, this is one of those things where the endocannabinoid system is so varied per person that I think that everyone's going to have a different reaction or none at all. Yeah. And so with this stuff, I would say test as much as humanly possible. I've been using the brand Ned. They're out of Colorado, and chatting with them a lot about sourcing and where they get their stuff from and like how they process stuff. And like, this is a world that I still don't know all the nuance to how everything is extracted and processed, but it seems like the higher heat and sort of like the shittier plants that they use and the certain parts of the hemp plant they use, basically you can claim CBD and you can claim like hemp extract, which is what everyone needs to call it now due to certain government rulings. But theirs is super legit. And if you combine something we were talking about briefly before, if you combine a little bit of THC with it, so non-psychoactive amounts, like for me, like 1 milligram or 2 milligrams, like I'm a pretty big lightweight when it comes to THC. Yeah. Like anything over that, and I'm just paranoid freak, and I'm just out of my mind, and I hate it. It's brutal. So I actually don't like getting high, but the 1 to 2 milligrams of THC with it really, really amplifies its effects.
Yeah. And actually brings up another good use for it too, is for people who are like recreational cannabis users, because, or even not just recreational, I guess any cannabis users who are getting, like a lot of cannabis that we get now is crossbred for having just intense amounts of THC and very low amounts of CBD. And for a lot of people who are trying, like if you're trying to use cannabis for anxiety or something like that, getting a 20 to 1 THC, it's going to be a bad move. Yeah. So I've talked to a lot of people who, like, if they are cannabis users, they'll supplement with CBD when they are consuming like high potency THC. If they're not, it's like depending on where you're from, right? If you're from a place where you're able to get like, medical grade and you can, look at the amounts of CBD and THC that are in the product, that's a different story. But when you don't know and you're more falling into that recreational department, I think supplementing with the CBD while you're doing it's probably going to help you have much, much better effect.
Yeah. And I mean, again, like how you think about how far are we from the actual plant here? I think that a lot of that stuff is super processed. I mean, even you go into, yes, you have some that are plants. Well, those plants, a lot of people say, oh yeah, they're smoking flower, all this stuff. Like that stuff is also pretty selected over a very, very long period of time just to get people super high.
Like GMO weed.
Yeah. It's like, it's basically to get to like, it's been selected for as long as we could tell to get people high. Yeah. And so like when you're taking the full, like more wild strain of hemp plants that have really, really low concentrations of THC occurring already, and then they basically just have to filter the THC out for legality reasons.
Right.
That's a more natural thing than taking some crazy strain and some other crazy strain and like putting them together to like figure out some new way to get people high. Yeah. Which like nothing wrong with that if we want to get into, but like there's such a broad spectrum of this industry, and I think it's really interesting how it's all playing out. Like I said, I've been a skeptic for a while. I found this stuff to be really helpful for my sleep. That's pretty much the only thing I've realized it to be good for. I don't know. You're talking about, I don't know if you've experimented much, but like I have to take a shitload, like 50 to 75 milligrams. Like one, it's not cheap. Two, it's like most people don't have access to that type of quality of stuff and like that much at a time. So like when you're getting stuff again in a product, no product can be reasonable price, including that much in it. So I don't know if you've had experience and what you think of it, but
yeah, I mean, a couple times that I use it as I actually really like using it in combination with coffee. It almost works.
Caffeinated, I'm assuming.
Yeah, with caffeinated coffee. Yeah, it almost works kind of similar to how, you might take theanine with caffeine to try to like prevent you from getting like the, the robust stimulant effect or something like that. So I found it to work very similar to that. So I really like doing CBD and coffee. And then before bed as well, one of the really interesting things that I found with Oura Ring is that drinking any sort of alcohol before bed, even like having some wine, will really throw off REM sleep and deep sleep markers for me. And when I supplement with CBD, so if like say I have a couple glasses of wine before bed, and if I supplement with CBD before bed, I see an improvement. So that's anecdotal, but
taking the uppers and the downers. And
yeah, maybe
a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
Maybe don't trust my recommendation. I don't know here.
Yeah, I mean this is one where I've seen the effects vary between product amounts and timing for people. So I'd say test for yourself. It's not a huge game changer, I would say. Yeah. Again, it's like with all these things, it's sort of like a supplement issue where like they are supplements and they're additives. Get everything else locked down first. Like stop trying to figure out what the latest like biohacking ingredient is. Right. Get the fundamentals down, like move your body. Don't be so stressed out. Get outside a ton. Sleep well, eat well, like have good relationships, have meaningful work, make sure all those boxes are checked, and then start adding these things in. I mean, that's how I think about it.
Yeah, you got to get back to like a strong baseline with it. Cool. All right. That's it for CBD. Next question we have is from...
so I should go to this one last. This is sort of like we'll tie.
Yeah, that's a good question. So we'll move to Ross Landy, and it's how much sun time should we be getting in regards to vitamin D? What supplements will help?
Yeah. So the way I think about this is as much as you can, as much as your skin will tolerate. Yeah. And your skin will know because you will start getting super hot and you will burn. The problem is that people aren't exposed. So this is like whole notion of sun exposure and it being dangerous is so fucking stupid.
We had a long talk about this when we were in, what was it, Santa Monica? I think you, me, and Alex were sitting on the beach and we were talking about sun exposure and like everybody's out putting on sunscreen and everything, and we were kind of laughing about that.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And it's like, we've removed ourselves from being outside. Like people who, this is one of those polarizing topics where if you don't put on sunscreen or if you say anything about sunscreen, people think you've lost your damn mind.
Yeah. You're a hippie.
Yeah. And it's wild because do we see any other animal living that has to put some lotion on its skin to be outside?
Right.
No. Do you think humans got to this point for hundreds of thousands of years and all of our ancestors by putting things on their skin? Like, no, this is like, we never did this until the last 50, 60, 70 years.
Right.
And so what happens is we live a life where we stay inside all the time. We don't expose our full bodies to the sunlight. We have clothes on. And so we go outside for too long. So we stay inside for 8 months at a time. Right. And then do 1 week where we go balls to the wall and go all sun all the time and then burn to a crisp. And go, oh shit, it's going to cause skin cancer. Like, yes, of course.
Right. Or you get the people that have been, working in an office 12 hours a day, and then they go take like a trip to Mexico or something like that. And they sit on the beach for a week, and it's like, yeah, you probably need some sunscreen or you need to ease into it or something.
Yeah. I mean, this would be analogous to having somebody who you tie their legs up and put them in a closet for 8 months and then unstrap them and say, go run an ultra marathon now as fast as you can.
Yeah.
Like, of course you're going to have problems here. So like with all things in life, you should look for graded exposure to the sun. It's no different. So if it's, becoming springtime, going into summertime, like we've been outside quite a lot, try to get outside a lot, and especially at the later times of the day. And I have like over the last couple of months, and I feel totally fine.
Yeah.
If you're switching time zones and going somewhere tropical, like this again was never done in human history. We had seasons we adjusted to. We didn't like just walk from crazy high latitudes to equatorial ones. So this stuff is going to be problematic. So vitamin D, I mean, this is again like as much as you can tolerate.
Right.
You should be able to tolerate where you live a full day outside.
Right.
Your skin should be able to tolerate that.
Yeah. And I think the important thing to point out is like developing the tolerance too. Cause it's like right before quarantine started, right at the start of quarantine, I went back to Florida and spent 2 months there. And it was coming out of Austin, out of kind of February, March in Austin, where it's a little bit grayer. There's not as much sun, going to Sunshine State where there's just a ton of it. And so what I started doing is like every day, it's like, okay, let's go out and like lay in the sun for 20, 30 minutes and then work up to an hour. And then, it's like slowly easing my way back into it. And by the end of it, it's like I can, sit outside for hours in the sun and feel great. So I think it's like one of those things where, if you're from the Midwest, and you go 6 months without really getting access to sun because it's negative 10 degrees outside and you're stuck inside, probably have to ease back into it to develop that tolerance.
Right.
You probably can't, it's something that it might take some time. So it's either you maintain the tolerance or you have to get it back before you can really do that type of thing, I think.
Yeah. And I feel like you're some, super, super pale person whose ancestry is from like, I don't know, like Ireland or something like that. And then you move to Ecuador, like maybe the rules don't apply as much. So this is not like a broad sweeping thing. Like if you're at an environment that's like extremely different from your genetics, well then, yeah, you might need to be a little bit more careful. But if that's the case, then, and you really need to use sunscreen, like I have some friends that this is exactly the thing. Like no matter what, they'll burn. And they've tried and exposed. So they use some sunscreen, but they use ones that have titanium oxide in them that actually forms a layer of barrier on your, like a physical barrier on your skin. So a lot of other sunscreen, what it does is it's just a chemical thing that like tries to block certain rays from getting in. So you actually get cooked just as much. You just don't burn basically. And so you're getting the same radiation damage. But you're
not getting the external skin damage.
Yeah, but you're just removing your body's built-in sensor to say, hey, dummy, get out of the sun.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and so if you use sunscreen, like you need to actually put a barrier, and this is why clothes work, because they bounce the photons of the sun, the radiation away from you. Same with the titanium oxide. So this is not relevant to vitamin D, but I think it's just relevant to address that. And then as far as like, is this enough vitamin D? I just got mine tested actually, and it's at 60 nanograms per milliliter.
What's the recommended range?
So I think it's like 19 or 20 around there. That's like, and it depends per lab you draw. It's saying that like after that you're good. So after that you're technically not deficient, but is that optimal? That's the question. And I like to see people like between 45 and 70 or so. I don't take vitamin D, and that's what my level's at. So like the best thing to do is just test and see where you're at. So
when or is there a time when a vitamin D supplement is a good thing to include?
Our lives are pretty great in that we can dictate our own schedule and we're not forced to be inside when the sun is shining, like a lot of people are with their jobs. And so if you literally can't do your environment, like try to get outside, try not to get burned, and like try to get as much as you can. And if you test, especially in the summertime, I think that there's probably a lot of inherent pulsatile fashions in our hormones throughout the year. And I actually think that there should be some decline in vitamin D status in your bloodstream, especially probably during the winter months, and then elevate during the summer months. And I think all things should sort of ebb and flow like that a little bit, both in a macro and a micro perspective. And so I would say, like, don't have to supplement
all year round, all the time, like let your sun exposure dictate it. But no, we're getting into summer. And if you're not, above like 40, 45 nanograms per deciliter, I believe it is, then you should be supplementing and do it with fat. And everyone's different too. Like how much fat you have matters too. It's a fat soluble nutrient. So if you take a ton, it can get stored in your fat. Then if you start losing fat, they don't get secreted in your bloodstream. And you can actually have too much vitamin D. It's one of these things where it's easy to get too much as well. So be careful if you're figuring out your amount and can't figure it out, like work with a doctor. They should be able to help out. But anywhere between like 1,000 and 15,000 IUs per day for most people, just depending on their genes, how much they're exposed to sun, like what their latitude's at, their status, things like that. But I've found if people are just outside a couple hours a day, especially, we are out, we usually out like 3 to 5.
Yeah.
And here, that's the most intense time of the sun.
Yeah.
It's more than enough for us.
Yeah. That's why I like to keep vitamin D on hand when I'm, my family's back in the Midwest. So when I go back in the winter time and if I'm going to be staying for a while and I know I'm not going to be getting, it's like you can still get outside, and there's still sun sometimes, but when it's -10, sometimes you'd rather stay inside. So that's usually when I keep vitamin D on hand. But like in the summertime here, whether it's here or Florida or whatever, I have no need to keep it in. I feel like I'm getting plenty.
Yeah. And there's more to sun than just vitamin D production as well. And we talked about earlier the melatonin secretion. So regulating your sleep status, regulating your circadian rhythm. And beyond that,
collagen synthesis, right? That's another one.
I'm sure. Do you know about this or what?
Just that it occurs. That's it.
Yeah. It's one of these things like we were exposed to sun as much as the sun was up for our entire human history. And now we've taken it away.
Right.
Almost entirely. And we're sitting in a room right now that's, I don't know, what would you say, 50% of windows to the outside.
Yep.
And people say, oh, this is pretty much the same as being outside. It's like, it looks the same as if I were to be outside. So I was curious about this. And I don't know, did I tell you about this?
I don't think so.
So I took a light meter. I bought a light meter from Amazon. It's like a fancy thing where it has this big bulb on the top. And light brightness is measured in lux, Lux. I was like, okay, is this like, it seems like it is as bright as outside. Like, is it as bright as it is outside? And I opened the top of it when I was inside in my living room. It was pretty brightly lit. We have huge windows in my living room. And it was like 110 lux. I was like, let's go see it outside in shade on my deck. And I pulled it out there. It was 10,000 lux.
Wow.
And I go, oh shit, let's go in the sunshine. This is like at 10 a.m.
Yeah.
So this wasn't even like 1, 2, 3 p.m. It was 70,000 lux.
Holy cow.
Yeah. And so even like being inside versus outside in the shade, which looks the same as being inside, was 100 times difference in brightness.
Yeah.
Like do you not think that 100 times difference is something that we should care about?
Yeah. Probably going to cause a different outcome over time.
Like, what do you think is going to do you think there's anything in your brain that's like, oh, brightness equals this thing?
Yeah.
Energy of like, oh, it's light out. I should be activating this certain hormones and doing stuff like that. Like, so ever since I did that, actually, the first thing me and Martha do when we get up in the morning is we get a little coffee, still on decaf, so I do that. And then we go on a walk and just get outside and get that brightness of light in our eyes. Yeah. And I've been trying to work more outside in the shade. It's like almost impossible now that it's starting to get summer here, but
blistering.
Brutal. But yeah, I was shocked. Yeah. And even like up where so I have a desk and I have it's a work area and it's like really bright. There's a huge window up there. And even if it's like the thing is exactly on the window pointing at the sun, it's only like a couple hundred. And then I take it like a foot and it's like 200. And then I take it to where my desk is like 100. Like the fall off from, I think the light's rays hitting the windows, bouncing off and then scattering once it gets inside is so great. It like blew me away.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's insane. I think that's just, it kind of goes along the line with what we've been saying for all these supplements, where it's like humans weren't meant, like we have, we're able to get out at 3:00 in the afternoon and play basketball, right? So we can do things that like get us some sunshine during the day. Humans weren't meant to spend, 8, 10, 12 plus hours indoors sitting in front of a computer And if that is what you're like, if that's the way that your life's set up and you're not able to get around in any sort of way, then that's obviously where supplement comes, that's where you have to introduce supplements, right? If there's no way around it. But I think for most people, there's things you can do. Like you mentioned, it's prioritizing it, waking up early and going for a walk, taking some time at lunch rather than scrolling on your phone in the break room, getting out and going for a walk and catching some sun, right? Like it's one of those things where, you don't have to necessarily be able to get out of work for 2 hours a day to be able to go outside to get it, to have it be beneficial, just prioritizing it within whatever your day is. I think most people can do that.
Yeah. And if you don't believe me around this stuff regarding the light, like buy the light meter, test it. It's mind blowing.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. You should, I had not known.
I know I need to post, but I don't post about anything because I'm lazy.
I think you should. All right. Next question. We got 2 more on this topic. So next one is from Just Eric. Just Eric. No.
That was sourced from my email.
Oh, okay. From your email. So could you comment on your thoughts on things like elderberry syrup, vitamin D, vitamin C, and quercetin on strengthening one's immune system to better fight COVID? Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm not saying that anything's going to cure.
Easy here.
Compliance guy now. So these are just supplements that one could take. What I've looked at is that, there's a lot of controversy right now of like what's going to cause a cytokine storm in your body, what's going to cause too much of an immune reaction, et cetera. Chris Masterjohn's doing some great work in this, but I think the first step before supplementing with any of this stuff is making sure that your own inflammatory status is under control. So a lot of the work that he's doing, I think, makes sense theoretically, but I think it's applied to people who are overly inflamed already. So sort of the work that he's saying is like, don't take high doses of, I don't know, I can't remember what he said, but I think vitamin D, vitamin A, some of these fat-soluble vitamins, because they can create these inflammatory cascades, and this is what the virus thrives on, so it can actually make the virus worse. But I don't think that's the case in people who don't have a lot of inflammation in their bodies. So I just recorded an episode with Dr. Kate Shanahan. I don't know when this is going to air in relation to that, but her stance was that because of how much vegetable oil people are eating, they're storing the polyunsaturated fatty acids from vegetable oil in their fat tissue. Then when they're infected by this virus and their body starts needing things like LDL, for example, to fight the virus, so it's liberating fatty acids. This fatty acid liberation causes the PUFAs to be released in the bloodstream, which causes more inflammation. And that inflammation cascade allows the virus to take over and basically kill people. And I think that the same thing's probably happening when these people when we're looking at this research and people, it's like 12% of people or something like that are metabolically healthy in the United States. Yeah. So the assumption that I have is that when we're looking at research that's causing inflammatory cascades, the people aren't metabolically healthy in the first place. Yeah. And I don't think that there is a problem with this stuff as long as you focus on your actual health first. Like again, with supplements, you're supplementing. If you are trying to prevent stuff with coronavirus with a supplement, instead of fixing your nutrition and your lifestyle, you are going about it completely wrong. Like this is the definitive thing we see now. Everybody who has obesity, diabetes, comorbidities, metabolic dysfunction are dropping like flies to coronavirus because of this inflammatory cascade. Your body does not have the resources it needs to fight the virus. And because it's so inflamed, it cannot work properly and the virus just takes over. Right. And so if you start adding in tons of supplements that might stoke your immune system, then that's bad too. There are some things that have, like elderberry, for example. I don't know if syrup, I haven't looked into the forums if syrup's as good as powder or whatever the hell, but elderberry looks to be decent. And it's like, when you think about it, it's like there's some that basically stoke up the immune system and then some that can stop viral replication. So those are two very different classes. Yeah. And so for example, like selenium stops viral replication. That's not trying to increase your immune system like vitamin C and vitamin D do. So vitamin C is basically like is needed with cysteine. So people like, I would rather supplement with N-acetylcysteine than vitamin C. Because again, like if you're eating a proper diet, you should be getting enough vitamin C in the first place. Right. It's cheap. You want to add it in, not a big deal. But like the thought is that you add NAC, you add vitamin C, those can go together in your liver, make glutathione, which is an antioxidant molecule, can help with your immune system. So like that again is like not going to be detrimental if you supplement with vitamin C. Vitamin D, there's some controversy out there. It's like if it's going to be too much for your immune system or not. So I actually built a product around this that will be launched with Equip. I don't know when this is going to air, but all the things that I have researched have been effective. And I'm going to probably do an episode all about this stuff if anybody even cares in a month from now.
Right. It might be over it at that point.
I don't think like judging walking around Austin, I don't think anybody gives a shit anymore. So,
yeah.
As far as elderberry, vitamin D, vitamin C, and different things you can take, quercetin, I think was another one. I would say focus on your lifestyle first, and then think about viral blocking replication stuff. So that's going to be a really long conversation. I just want to like take down virology basically, and like how viruses spread and then contracted and then replicate in the body. And I think it's going to be a whole episode. So I'll just wait for that one. But this is the point I want to make is, again, just treat your body right. And then start supplementing. Yeah.
Like the most effective thing that you can do right now, if you want to get your immune system going, is to take care of your body. Because I think is, when you look at like the research of like the different, people with having really high fasted blood sugar, people with elevated blood pressure, kind of falling into those categories of like being at higher risk. Like those are things that like you can improve those things relatively quickly if you get serious about it, right? It's like, you're not going to be able to obviously, completely restore your health in a couple of days, but this has been going on for what, 2-3 months people have been locked down for. Like you can do a lot of improvement to your health in 2-3 months to improve your outcome here.
Yeah, and the most insane thing is like we've made it sort of this joke that people are going for comfort food more and doing these bake-offs and just eating candy and stuff like that to like soothe their emotions. It's like literally the last thing you want to do right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, inflammation turns around pretty quickly when you just cut out all the bad shit.
Yep.
Yeah. So
yeah,
that's my suggestion.
All right. So we're going to round out this episode with one more question, and it's from Annie C. I don't know how to Annie CK use. It's how do you know what a quality supplement is?
Trick question. You don't.
If it has a Perfect Keto label on it and a Quip label on it, right?
Yeah, I mean that's how I know, and I know of a couple of the brands. I like Thorne, I like Jarrow. I mean, there's some other like large scale brands that do a good job, but this is just because of the industry knowledge that we have, and I think that your compliance stuff is like, in what you know about our manufacturing process, like you just don't know,
right?
And this is the problem is this is not a really like the regulations are set by the FDA on the manufacturers of the products.
Right.
And so the responsibility as us for Equip or for Perfect Keto, for example, are that we police our products and what's in them. Mm-hmm. And the onus is on every other brand. Like there is no approval process. When we launch a product, it's not like the FDA looks into our product, which means that anybody can just launch a product and say, hey, this is in it.
Yeah.
At any scale. Mm-hmm. And until somebody else does a test of it, a third-party test of it, and verifies that, like you have no idea.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different things that can happen here. So either the amount that is in the supplement could be just wrong, the form of the actual thing. So like we were talking about creatine before, like these different forms of creatine. Some different forms of different certain nutrients actually matter quite significantly of bioavailability and absorption rates. And if it says one form, but it's actually another one, it can be problematic. It can just not be in there at all. There's another class of things of like called excipients that are maybe not on the label, but in the product. So it's sort of still the Wild West when it comes to supplement regulation.
Yeah.
And Canada is really great at this. Actually, their supplement industry is sort of like a pharmaceutical industry in some ways.
Nice.
And I think that we have a long way to go before we get there. We do third-party testing on every single one of our batches for heavy metals, for verification that the manufacturer didn't, we trust our manufacturer that they're not going to put stuff in there. We've had experience with other manufacturers that have, so that's why we chose the one we do have.
Yeah.
But just in case there's some negligence and they forgot to put a certain ingredient or whatever, like we test everything third-party, every single batch for efficacy after that. So yeah, there's just a lot of things that aren't required to be on a label.
Yeah.
There's absolutely no requirement.
Yeah. I think the way that I look at it, cause I've been buying supplements since before I was working in a supplement industry. Right. So it's like, I think The couple things that as a consumer that you can do is one, you, like you said, it's not going to be foolproof, this method, but you should start by looking at the label, right? So you should look at a product, you should look at the ingredients to see, what things are being included in there. Cause there's some companies that are just putting stuff in that doesn't need to be in a product, right? So that can be step one, is seeing, are they using quality ingredients? I think then you can look at dosing. So you can start saying, okay, this is maybe this is a nootropic, or this is a pre-workout or whatever. Let's look at like some of the ingredients that they're using, and let's see how that stacks up. There's some great resources out there, websites where you can, look at the available research around efficacious dose. So you can kind of start seeing some of those things. I think most times if you see companies that are using pretty quality ingredients and they're dosing it pretty appropriately, I think that that's a pretty good, like if you can't get any other information on this company, I think that that's a good place to start as a consumer. But then I think outside of that, it's like trying to do your due diligence on the company itself, right? Like, can you kind of look into who's running the company, right? Like, is a company offering transparency where you can see like what is the character like of the people that are running the company and stuff like that. I think those things can help too. It's like, obviously we can sit here and toot our own horn about all the stuff that we do, but it's like we kind of know Perfect Keto got started because we wanted there to be quality supplements out there, right? Like that's why you did this, because you wanted to fill those gaps in, right? And that message is pretty loud and clear out there. So I think people can look for that when they're looking to these companies about like, what is the company about? What is their message? At the end of the day, you're never going to really, like you said, you're never going to really know what's going on. But I think that those are going to be good litmus tests, at least, to kind of see, like, make the most informed decision that you can when it comes to purchasing from a brand.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah.
I mean, some of these things, like trying to formulate this sleep product right now and to get all the stuff in it that I want at effective doses, it's like 8 capsules.
Yeah.
Like, well, like, is anybody going to want to take 8 capsules before bedtime? So I'm trying to think of like different ways people would do that. But this is what happens with the dosing, is that people will sprinkle in every little thing. And so it has all these claims on it. But they're not actually effective amounts. Or it's too expensive. Once you get an actual effective amounts, then it's too damn expensive. Nobody buys it anyways.
Yeah, which I think is a good thing to look at too, where it's like, if a company is selling, if there's a drastic price difference between two products that are claiming to have the same ingredient in there, like one company probably isn't just magically able to lower their cost that much to sell it at that price. Like there's probably something else going on there.
Yeah, I mean, this is why like we get a lot of complaints about our prices. Sometimes it's like, it's not we're making tons of profit and just like throwing cash everywhere. Right. It's not the way it works. Like, and the reason why the companies are able to put the prices so low is that they're either not, like, I know what margins are.
Right.
Like, I know what you need to run a business, and it's either these people are not using real like the ingredients that they say they are, or they have some goddamn secret that I've never been able to find.
Yeah, right.
I don't know. So yeah, it's a scary industry, and I would say the easiest way around it is just try to get everything from food. Mm-hmm. So try to take care of yourself and like not use supplements in the first place.
Yeah.
Which is ironic coming from the guy who has a couple different companies based on this stuff. But I mean, the whole point I want to get people to is like, take care of yourself, like figure out your health via real methods and use these as truly supplements.
Yeah.
Like the less reliance you have on them, the better.
Got it. All right, so before we wrap this up, since we've been talking about supplements this whole time, what are 3 supplements that you use most often or that you find to be most beneficial?
The 3 that I'm really rocking out right now, I'm doing a ton of krill oil, liver capsules, and magnesium before bed.
Nice. Any particular form for the magnesium?
Yeah, I do glycinate and taurinate as sort of a combo.
Nice.
You use like 3 and 8 as well. Magtine crosses the blood-brain barrier. Glycinate's more of a magnesium that will calm down your nervous system and your muscles. But taurinate sort of is also like a small enough one will get into your blood-brain barrier as well. So those are the 3 that I'd say that are most helpful right now. But I'm always playing around, my little pantry at home. Stacked full.
Yeah, always trying new things out.
Yeah.
Cool. All right.
What about you, man?
Oh, you want me? It's kind of the same. I was trying to think of my 3rd one, but the 2 I'm taking most is krill oil, beef liver capsules, and then I'm trying to think. So probably just like the beef protein from Equip, I think is so. Yeah, because I'm not a huge supplement guy either. Like I'm definitely like if there's a gap that needs to be filled or a goal I'm trying to reach is kind of the way that I look at it. So not a huge supplement guy, but haven't really been able to get to many farmers markets to pick up beef liver. So turning to beef liver capsules. I like doing krill oil just regardless. You know, I always like keeping that in. Probably don't eat enough seafood anyway. And
it's tough in Texas, man. Like, there's no good seafood shops here.
Yeah.
I don't we got stuff from Whole Foods once and got sick from it. So that's our best source here.
Yeah.
And then, it's like, I do proteins every day as far as like some sort of collagen, whey, beef protein. And then
it's hard to get enough in sometimes. Like when you're working and stuff, like it's hard to get enough protein in, especially as a male, you know, that's getting 3 exercises in a day. Like it's hard to get enough.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think of all the, I probably have too many supplements all the time. Just always trying to experiment and figure out ketones a lot because I'm eating carbs recently. So I'm not producing a lot of ketones. So when I'm working, I like to use that, but.
Kind of like adaptogens too, but that might have to be a conversation for another time.
Yeah, you got me like top 10 now. All right, Chris, appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Natural State Podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, I'd really appreciate you heading over to whatever service you're listening to this podcast on, dropping me a 5-star review and your thoughts on the show. This helps us get discovered by more people and spreading the good gospel of health. And if you want to stay plugged into all of my self-health experiments, recent research and books that I'm reading and my interpretations of those things, products that I'm testing, and thoughts on all things related to health, check out my free weekly newsletter called The Feed. You can sign up for that at dranthonygustin.com/thefeed. That's dranthonygustin.com/thefeed. Thanks again for tuning in and your support of the Natural State Podcast.